With newer styles like playing out from the back and gegen pressing, are we entering into an era of football that's just a lot more robotic?
So many different formations and systems, but are we missing the creative mavericks? The ones that made us fall in love with football in the first place?
And most importantly, are we overusing the term GOAT? Too much GOAT, yeah. Everything is a GOAT. Fucking Messi's GOAT, Ronaldo's GOAT, Darren Bent is GOAT. Just too much GOAT is happening, and I'm really craving a fucking biryani right now. Stop it, guys. Stop it. Especially you. Especially you, Fabrizio Romano. Stop using that fucking term and that fucking emoji. All right, welcome to the Corner Flag, everybody. As you can tell with that slightly different intro, we're trying something different this time onwards. Of course, it is the international break, and there is literally nothing to talk about. I know the IPL has started, but this is not that podcast. I know that a certain comedy club got vandalized.
Yeah,
But we are not going to have our houses be vandalized, so we are not going to be making any political comments. But on that note, by the way, isn't it great that we have made fun of Arsenal and Arsenal fans so often on this podcast? No Arsenal fan has ever come here saying we are the Arsenal part. They're not coming to break down our houses.
yeah. I mean, it is so much nicer to be making fun of Arsenal fans. Like
Yeah,
Mikel Arteta is
yeah,
like this guy who's been handed the silver spoon and
yeah,
has sort of become a joke, right? And no matter how many jokes you crack at him, he'll never respond,
yeah,
right? But there are a few other football personalities and purely football personalities who have a rabid following that if you
yeah,
make fun of them, the fans will get really, really pissed off.
yeah,
You know what I'm trying to say?
yeah,
Like people will say like Alex Ferguson is the true leader, and then there are people who'll be like, hey, let's break away from that faction because
yeah,
we are the true leaders of Alex Ferguson. And there'll
yeah.
be other people who break away from that and be like, no, we're the true leaders of Alex
See,
Ferguson.
see, all I'm saying is
Alex Saab.
Alex Saab did very well for that club, and he means a lot, and still means a lot.
Man, when
He
you
will
said
always
tha, I died a little bit. Sorry, say.
he will always mean a lot to everybody associated. But there are shit happens. People can move different ways, and you will only be judged with what you currently do. Everybody who has come after him has been judged on their failures and their successes, and that's just how it goes. Now we will make fun of Ruben Amorim also. We will
Yeah.
make fun of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer also, who was supposed to be the one true heir. But we are equal opportunity offenders, guys. you
Yeah.
you have to say. And I just want to say, for all the people who are connected with uh, be more like Arsenal fans. I never thought I'd say this on this podcast,
I know.
but be more like Arsenal fans.
Yeah.
All they do is comment on our videos, which is great. Please send us hate comments and all. That's fine. Absolutely cool. We'll respond to them also and we'll have a discussion. It's great fun. But don't go around breaking stuff, guys. Like, that's just not necessary.
Yeah. And be like Arsenal fans, be like Mikel Arteta, crack as many jokes as you want. He's not going to respond. Shut up, Amogh.
Oh,
Right, you guys can go find Amogh and me in Tamil Nadu if you want to. We're in
uh,
Tamil Nadu.
yes, we are. You're actually very close to Tamil Nadu right now. I'm not, but yeah, we are both in Tamil Nadu. No regret at all. But no, what we are trying to do this time around, because like I said, there's no club football, right? Which is and we are not going to talk about international football because it's unless there is a major tournament that is taking place, there is no reason to talk about international football. Like, fuck it, it's the same thing. Cristiano Ronaldo still scoring goals for Portugal, and every time he scores, or even every time Cristiano Ronaldo farts, no, I think Fabrizio Romano immediately has an Instagram post out. The GOAT, Cristiano, has now farted 500 times, and he has been given the Guinness Book of World Records for the most farts by a player who is
Goat.
under, yeah,
Just goat. At the end of
who
it,
is,
goat.
yeah, at the end of it, GOAT.
He knows as far it's Ramzan, so he knows. He
Yeah.
knows what's going on.
It's catering to very very different demographics, right? But no, what we're going to do in this episode is something very interesting that we wanted to talk about, which is just have a discussion between Mukesh and I, and hopefully everybody who's watching can also get in the comments. You can write into us on our social media profiles as well, and we're going to talk about just where football as a game is going now, because since the time we started following, Mukesh, and of course I know you're a child and you started following football much later than I did.
See this beard? See this beard?
Yeah.
Children don't have beards.
Yeah, you still don't have white hair in it though, so it
You also don't have.
no, no, I have a few. Like I have a few brown hairs. I think they're pre-white.
This goat season, you're becoming a fully
uh,
chopping.
hey,
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 hey, hey, hey.
hey.
But no, no. So
You have to say, shut up, yeah, Mukesh.
shut up, yeah, Mukesh. No, but so the game has definitely changed a lot, right? Like I see what it was when we started following the game and fell in love with the game, and what it is now. It is so robotic. So very, very simply put, the discussion that we are going to have in this week's episode of the Conflag is tactics or vibes. What is the better way to enjoy this game? And I understand that there is no clear answer to this question, but I will try and arrive at it. Of course, vibes is what we still consider what football was in the 90s and the 2000s, under Wenger, under Arteta, not Arteta, under Wenger, under Ferguson, under Steve Bruce, and Sam Allardyce. They were also there, guys. But now it's all tactics, it's all rehearsed. So you start us off, Mukesh. What is your understanding of these two very, very different routes to the game that we are seeing right now?
Uh, okay, honestly, I know there's a lot of people who complain about the lack of vibes. But I mean, I'm not saying, so obviously both of us aren't arguing for absolutes, right? We're not saying it should only be tactics, or we're only arguing for vibes. But I'm actually quite happy about the uh, structure that football is getting. Like when I see clips of football back in the day, or just even what from what I remember, like it is nice to see that players um, have a little more order in them. That because I think back in the day, football felt like if you had a few personalities, you're probably winning it. Whereas right now, at least theoretically, it does feel a little more possible that if you do X and Y process, there's a chance you can beat a tougher team, right?
Hmm.
And that to be just theoretically, I'm not saying it's completely happening. I'm not saying that, but the fact that we can reduce it to a certain action and principles, I do feel like okay, if with a right amount of training and a little bit of luck and catching a very good team on a bad day, right? If you stick to a certain process, you can make a 1-0 or a 2-1, and beat a big or catch a point. If it's maybe that's all that matters to you,
Hmm.
and beat a bigger team. So I'm actually slightly more in favor of going away from individuals, because if you're relying on individual talent and individual flair, to me
Hmm.
that always felt a little like scary. Whereas football feels a little more controllable, which I think I prefer weirdly.
So the thing is, and I'm not saying that you should only have vibes.
Yeah, yeah. We're no, we're not talking in
Yeah,
absolutes.
nobody likes vibes FC, and that's not to say that the teams of Ferguson or the teams of Wenger or the teams of any manager in that era were only vibes. Like there was still
Yeah,
coaching involved, there was still tactics
yeah.
involved.
Photo is still tactics. Like no
Yeah, you
matter.
still no,
Yeah.
and you still had game plans. You still had a way you would approach every game. But the difference, no, is I feel like now every manager comes with a set philosophy or a set system, how they want to play and what they want the players to do. And it's not just about an overarching philosophy for the squad or for the team or for the club. It is literally as detailed as in minute 24, if the score is still 0-0 and we have 65% possession, then how does my wing back invert to the other side and play to the number 10s, and what do my strikers do at that same time? Do they drop deep? It is that rehearsed. If you look at, and I'm coming at it purely from a United perspective, and you can also chime in with the managers that you have seen and what has happened since they have left. But every manager who has left United, after the manager leaves, if a player who played under that manager and is still playing for the club is asked about that manager, so like for example, now if somebody asks Diego Dallo about Eric Ten Hag and what he has to say, and it's not just Ten Hag, it was the same thing about Mourinho, it was the same thing about Van Gaal also to a certain extent. They all say the same thing, which is that, oh, the instructions were very detailed and very precise. He wanted us to do very specific things at specific moments, and it just goes to show that the freedom has been taken out of these teams and these players, and maybe somewhere that is what is detrimental to these players. Because if as again as a football player, you have to be able to express yourself on the pitch. You have to be able to make your own decisions on the pitch. Whether it's the right decision or wrong, it doesn't matter, but you have to be given the freedom to do that. Because if you're going to play with this thing, Arey, nahi, if I pass it back, then I'm going to get fucked. I have to look for a pass forward. It's changing your game, which is something that you're not used to. And no amount of coaching is really going to help, because then that's essentially changing you as a player. It's just taking the soul out of football, I feel.
So to me, what people think is the soul of football is actually what Darwin Nunez does. The more I see Darwin Nunez, the more I'm convinced that back in the day, vibes football
Huh. Darwin Nunes
will
would have been
not
a
is not
great
something
player.
to is not something to aspire to week in week out, because to me that's what creativity and inspiration without a heavy focus on structure and decision making looks like. And I do feel like maybe the problem with Darwin Nunez is that he's a player coming, I think, maybe 20 years too late, right?
Correct. He's
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 a player.
he's he's from a different era.
Yeah,
Like, he
Darwin
should have
Nunez
he should have
between
been in the 90s, 2000s. He should have been a player
2000 to
there.
2010, Darwin Nunez would have been killing it in the Premier League,
Yeah.
right?
He's
Especially at
he's
a club like Liverpool, which was anyway dying. Like, they
yeah,
were anyway slipping, and he would have been the fan favorite back in the day. But I think,
yeah.
but watching him is not good.
He's in such a different era. वो अभी घर पे जाके किशोर कुमार के गाने सुनता है. Like, he's like, dude, have you heard this new artist Kishore Kumar, dude? Like, he's fucking mad. He's
He's
like,
like, have you heard the Backstreet's back? Backstreet Boys are back. Crazy.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so that I do feel like is my bigger issue. That maybe in a in a sort of like highlights package reel, it might be nice.
hmm,
But I think just the idea that players will play like that day in day out, I do feel like scares me, and it makes for actually very I wouldn't say bad football viewing, but it might be bad football results,
right.
right? In the sense that it it, it just I feel like there'd be a lot more draws, or there'd be like uh, or there'd be a lot more of these. Uh, it'll be decided by who has that one player, right?
Hmm,
It'll be like Eden Hazard for me was the last vibes player, right? Someone who could
hmm,
just take the game by the scruff and be like, I will change it,
yeah.
right? Whether or not when like two teams were equal on tactics, and that to me was scary. Like, I mean, I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't, uh, and the reason I didn't enjoy it is because it really took out the idea that something uh, could be like a smaller team could punch above their weight,
Yeah.
right? Because by the last 20 minutes, a bigger team will have that creative player who has something to unleash on them.
Yeah. But I don't entirely agree with that, yeah, because even back in the day, there have been cases of smaller teams punching above their weight and defeating the big boys. Like, that has always happened, and that will always happen.
Not really. I
Because,
do. I
yeah,
like. I
yeah, of
do.
course. Of course.
I mean, literally, I think between 2000, between from the time I think was it Blackburn who won the last league until Newcastle. They were like what I think three winners
Hmm.
between United, Chelsea, and Arsenal. Between maybe even City, right? Four winners, right? And so I don't think it really had that much threat. Even in fact,
Okay, 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 wait. Forget the Premier League. Premier League is a different beast altogether. It is a
yeah,
league format system, right? But in the FA Cup, for example, Wigan and Portsmouth have also won the FA Cup in that time period that we're talking about. And see where those clubs are right now. They definitely punched above their weight. In Euro 2004, Greece won the Euros. So even in international football, like there have been instances where an underdog has punched above their weight, and not just in an individual match, but in a tournament that has amounted to silverware. So that has always happened, and that will always happen, because regardless of whatever your tactics are or whatever your vibes are, you can still be found out on a day. You can still have a bad day at the office, and I don't think tactics completely nullify that. If tactics were going to completely nullify that, Man City would have consistently won even this season. Not that, like, of course they have been consistently
Yeah.
winning, but why would everything change right now? Because he is Guardiola is the epitome of tactical genius, right? Where regardless of what happens, as long as Guardiola is the manager, all his players are removable cogs in that machine. एक को निकालो दूसरे को डालो and nothing will change. The system still works. He is the epitome of that. That is what he is known for and will always be known for. So why has that not worked? So that will always happen. Like that's not the issue. I feel like the over reliance on a certain system or a certain philosophy is what is really causing a lot of clubs to absolutely underperform. Case in point, Man United. Case in point, Burnley under Vincent Company last season. And if you're talking about Burnley, for example, now, Burnley didn't have Premier League level players. They had Championship level players, and Company wanted them to play out from the back, play a certain high speed attacking type of football, which was too sexy for that squad. Right? It was too much for them. And they could still do that in the championship because of the other teams around them in the championship. They were clearly the better side or the best side in the championship, and they took it by storm. But when they come to the Premier League and they don't have enough investment and buy enough better quality players for their season in the Premier League, when they try to do the same thing in the Premier League, they get easily found out because the quality of the other teams is that much better. Now, one would have argued that Company should have changed his methods a little bit and tweaked his system a little bit in the context of where the club was. The context is, you are not a very big club, not a very rich club that has been promoted to the Premier League with players who are not Premier League level. Is it important for you to stick to your brand of playing regardless of what happens? Or is it better for you to tweak it slightly and take each game as it comes and formulate a game plan for each team, even if that means chopping and changing your squad, your system, to make sure that you don't lose? It's not even about winning for Burnley. Make sure you don't lose and build a platform to try and nick a 1-0 victory. If they would have done that, no, they would have still been in the Premier League. Case in point, also with Leicester. Leicester, of course, under Maresca, stormed the championship. One can say that they lost Maresca to Chelsea this season, which is why they're in dire straits. But it's the same thing. Like, they've just not adapted, and I feel like that's because of the over reliance on tactics and systems and philosophies.
But okay, here's the thing. To me, okay, if I'm a football player
Hmm,
who's entered any league,
hmm,
right? Hmm. Generally, there'll be like 10% of players who are like extraordinary geniuses, right? And there'll be 10% of players who are definitely shit, who are not supposed to be in that league, and 80% who are sort of whatever. In about 80% of the players for whom the difference is quite small.
yeah.
I feel like the tactics, what it's done is that it's reduced the gap between the top creamiest players and the middle players, right?
Hmm,
It makes someone like an Andy Robertson fit somewhere.
hmm.
I'm saying without something like systems in place, I don't think someone like Andy Robertson would become the player that he is, or would have been maximized to his strengths. And I know he had a good 5 years,
I
right?
disagree. I completely disagree because
Andy Robertson is not a vibes player. He's not a creative tactical genius. He's a guy who's been given a very. He's a guy who's great at
correct,
executing
correct,
one specific task, which is
correct,
run down the line, put the ball in, run back, put your legs between
correct.
attacker and goal,
And I
right?
submit to you, Jisung Park for Manchester United under Ferguson. Jisung Park wasn't a sexy player. He wasn't a
It's not
creative
a second player,
flair
correct? I'm,
player.
I'm saying no, no. What I'm going to say is that now what that does is that it gives Andy Robertson a chance. Like I think Jisung Park was an exception, but I think there are. Okay. I think there are way more people like Andy Robertson now, and the difference, like you can very confidently take an Andy Robertson to a camp now to be like, hey, take on Messi. Whereas I think back in the day, it could not have been possible. And I think the gap between United and Barca back in the day was much lesser than say when Liverpool met Barcelona. Right? I think Liverpool was considerably worse than Barcelona when they beat them than when United met Barcelona. They were sort of equals, and the only real difference I would say was actually back in the day was Messi, the one guy who really killed both the Champions League finals.
Hmm.
Whereas now because you don't have that, you might not get Stoke, you might not get the kind of results like was it Celtic or Rangers who beat Barcelona. You won't get that big results,
Hmm.
but you can still get Newcastle beating Liverpool, Liverpool beating Barcelona. You can get these sort of results in the top tier at least, which I think to me makes it a little more exciting. You get Atletico Madrid taking on two of the biggest uh, clubs in the world, because I think Atletico Madrid in any other league, right, wins a lot more leagues, right?
Hmm.
Except it's their bad luck that they're stuck with Madrid and Barca.
Hmm.
And I feel like what it does is I think systems is great for middle class and upper middle class players and teams. Right? It probably sucks for the absolute extremes. Like it sucks for the creative players because now they're stubbed into something. They have to be cramped down,
Hmm.
which also explains why there are maybe fewer Brazilian players are doing too well. Say especially in the last decade, there have been too many Brazilian players who've done really well,
Hmm.
right? And it also explains why not many championship players have done really well
Hmm.
in the Premier League. But I think what it does is it takes that middle class and upper middle class players and pushes them to a much higher level, which
But
I
I
think is great.
but I don't think that's just because of the tactics. I think it's also because of the coaching.
But okay, but
It's
coaching
the
and
it's
vibes
the
and tactics
coaching.
only, nah.
No, but I'm talking not about tactics or game plans or rigid systems. I'm talking about individual coaching brilliance. If Robertson was bought from Hull for what 3 million, where
Yeah,
nobody would have expected him to do anything great. He was bought by Liverpool. He was turned into the Andy Robertson that you see today by Klopp,
yeah.
where Klopp drilled his job into him. But that's the same thing that you can say for, like I said, Jisung Park. That's the same thing you can say for Gary Neville. That's the same thing you can say for any of those players, right? If you take the class of '92, for example,
Mm.
except for Ryan Giggs and David Beckham, none of the others were particularly flair players. And I would even count David Beckham as a flair player. He was a flair person, not a
Yeah.
flair player. But they were coached into their roles in a very, very good way.
So then that's
But
what you're
that's
also then you're also saying that actually coaching is when tactics is
co-
better.
coaching. But I'm not. I'm talking about rigid systems, right? At no point was Gary Neville told by Alex Ferguson, and I know this because I've spoken to Gary Neville and Alex Ferguson. But at no point was Gary Neville ever told by Ferguson that तू right back है, तू bench उधर ही रहे, तू right back ही खेलेगा. There were times when Gary Neville was given the freedom to come into centre back. He's played centre half also. He's played up the wing also. He had that freedom to make those decisions. At no point did Ferguson ever tell Scholes, you have to look for the Hollywood passes, like they're called, what Bruno does now. You have to only do that. No, Scholes was given that freedom to look for those passes. At no point was he told, fuck, you have to control your tackling because our system doesn't allow us to have so many fouls in the middle of the park, and we need the game to be free flowing for our system to be actually good. It was Scholes' individual temperament that made him the player that he was. And if I have to step away from Man United examples for example, for a bit, take Andrea Pirlo, right, from that era. Andrea Pirlo in today's day and age, where does he fit? In what system does he fit? You tell.
He could fit in any 4-3-3. He
No,
would
he
fit. It
couldn't.
depends on how you play. He could fit in
He
any
wouldn't.
4-3-3.
He wouldn't. I don't think he would fit in any 4-3-3 because he is from an era. His play style is such that does not translate, unfortunately, to the modern game. The modern game is way too fast. It's way too one touch, two touch.
But that's the thing about now, the fact that you can do that reduces the gap between an Andrea Pirlo and a player from the championship, or from a player who's probably whose biggest strength is speed. You know what I'm trying to say? Like I think,
Hmm.
but I think that to me something is to be celebrated. The fact that there are guys who are, I don't want to say born with gifts, because no one is really born, and of course they work equally hard, but
Hmm.
the fact that you can bring down or neutralize someone that good, for me, that is something to be desired. I don't want some player to be so good that they absolutely run away with everything. I
Yeah.
want there to be that threat of it. I want there to be uh, that where, because that also pushes that player to do obviously much better, etc. But I also feel like, to me, that's where I want these tactics. I'm very joyous of the fact that there are a lot more tactics, that there aren't random shots that are that like, people really lament the lack of screamer goals,
Hmm.
but I think people are forgetting how many shots just didn't go in, right? The
Yeah.
belters look good when they go, but I feel like the number of shots that just never went. And as someone who saw, say, like from the good days of Steven Gerrard and Javier Alonso take those belters, and some of them did go in, till like March later when you watch fucking Ricky Lambert and all try to score, I just know they never go in, right?
But that's on Ricky Lambert, not anybody, not anybody else. Uh,
So to me, to reduce that gap between these guys, like I see, I'm a little wary of taking players like Andrea Polo, because to me they're those cream. They're the kind of cream that really, when they're in your team, that's it, gone. You're gone. You're just flying away with the game.
hmm.
Uh, okay, I'm trying to think of a player who probably I feel like would have benefited a lot more right now. Like, remember, I mean, again, Liverpool example, but I think someone like Glenn Johnson would have been would have had a much better career now if we utilize his strengths. Someone like,
Yeah.
I think, even like Jack Wilshere, like I think maybe a little more injury management from him. I think he was a little bit
Yeah.
burnt to the ground,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Wilshire though
Um,
was injuries only. That's the
no, no, sure, but I do
unfortunate.
feel like with more strategic tactics, he would have been a much better player, right? I think someone like Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, these are the kind of players I feel like who got caught because they just couldn't keep up with the transition to go into systems. Whereas if they were
Yeah.
born into a systems era,
Yeah.
right, with very specific, clear roles, I
Yeah.
think they would have been superstars.
Yeah, you're right, because they were definitely in the transition period only.
And they just
They were
couldn't keep up because
superstars.
they
Yeah.
came in when it was all vibes, and suddenly they
Yeah.
had to switch. And I think that pushing of making them become 1 second faster, they just didn't adapt to it, which obviously pushed them into injuries. I think there's a bunch of these Arsenal players, right? Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain,
Hmm.
right? Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, right? They just became a little more injury prone, and I think the smart thing is that only Fabregas survived a little bit because I think he went to Barcelona at the right time,
Hmm.
right? He went to the mecca of tactics so that he could really adapt, but these players really couldn't.
Right.
Uh, so that is why I feel like no, maybe these systems would have been better
Yeah.
um, for current players.
So I'll let's talk about a current player now who I feel is not benefiting from rigid systems at all, and that guy's name is Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish at Aston Villa was a different beast altogether. He was so dynamic, he was so free flowing, he was so direct against the opposition. Everything that you want from a winger slash central attacking midfielder, because he can play both roles, right? He can play as a number 10 and he can play on the wing as well. He was so good, and he had a great shot on him. He had everything going for him. But from the time he has moved to Man City, his career has just been going downhill and downhill, because I don't know if it is Guardiola's system, or if it is the fact that Jack Grealish has the IQ of a table lamp and is unable to take Guardiola's
Instructions.
system. But he's a shadow of himself. You can see the difference between him and Jeremy Doku now, for example, because Doku, who is his immediate competition for that left wing place, is so dynamic. He's so fucking direct. The minute Doku has the ball, as somebody who doesn't even like Man City, I'm like, oh fuck, now what is he going to do? This
Yeah.
looks exciting. As a viewer, I'm excited to see what can happen the minute Doku has the ball. And it's not like Doku has been playing really well or anything, but he just gets that excitement in, at least. That's not the case with Grealish. Grealish, you know that he's not really going to do anything. His career has nosedived.
I think with Grealish, I think the problem is more of a personality thing. I think he's the guy who expects a team to be built around him. And maybe when buying him, that was the idea that, hey, that this is a project, like this will be built around you.
Hmm.
Like City teams were built around their defensive midfielder, but in the future, Guardiola is going to change it to be built around their attacking midfielder, and you'll be, like you and De Bruyne will be like the attacking pivot. Like you have a defensive pivot. Like
Hmm.
they would have told him probably that, hey, you're going to become an attacking pivot, two-man pivot, and then it's going to be like a 4-1-2-3 or something of that sort. And
Hmm.
and maybe the fact that that project didn't really rely on him and he didn't have what it takes. I think it does feel like with him it's a what's it called? It's a personality temperament thing. I don't know if it's just bound to tactics because um, yeah, because even I think when he was at Aston Villa,
Hmm.
right? Uh, I think it was more that it wasn't just vibes, right? It was a team that was just built around his genius. Like he single-handedly, I think, was in his final season, he kept them from relegation. I think on the last day he
Yeah.
scored a free kick. I think that got them those 3 points, if I'm not wrong. That just kept them up uh, out of relegation,
Yeah.
right? So I think he in particular needs just an arrogance or I don't know whether what you call it, but he's a little bit no Wilfred Zaha. I think Wilfred Zaha needed that main character energy, and once you can't go to Man City and then not have the main not have like there's nobody who's a bigger main character than Pep at Man City,
Yeah.
right? Um, Maybe as an example, I might like if to counter example, I'll take someone like a Declan Rice, who I think seems to be obviously there are no trophies yet to show for it, but I guess there will be trophies in the future. But
It's
is that
Arsenal.
yeah, shut up, Yamog. uh, is that like I do think if he continued staying at West Ham, right? I feel like maybe his career would not have uh, been as impressive, fluctuated middle table. But I think because he is at Arsenal with a very specific box to box role
Hmm.
and and again center of the pitch, I think he's able to thrive and he's come as close to winning trophies as possible.
Hmm. That. So the other example that I'll give from Man City also is Phil Foden. Do you
Hmm.
think Phil Foden is shackled by the tactical requirements of Guardiola?
I've always felt the opposite, which is that I think Phil Foden has always received the rewards of being a tactical player. I don't think I've never rated him very highly. I think
Hmm.
he's always been at a place that like you own a Ferrari. At some point, you're going to hit a speed of 220. It doesn't really tell me how good of a driver you are necessarily just
Hmm.
because you own a Ferrari,
Guys,
right?
by the way, just going at 220 doesn't mean you're a good driver.
That's what I'm saying.
Just-
That's what I'm also saying. I'm saying just because you hit a high speed doesn't mean you're a good driver.
Mukesh revealing to the world that he does not drive.
um, so yeah, so I've never really rated. I think
But Foden,
Stockport Javi, I think is the
Stockport
most.
Messi, bro. Stockport Messi.
I think it's called Stockport Javi. Okay,
No,
huh?
no, Stockport Messi. He's short. He has a low center of gravity. He's left-footed. Stockport Messi, or as Fabrizio would call it, little goat. No, but he is a player that has developed in England, who is so different from what England were used to developing in terms of their players. I think he was one of that first breed of really dynamic attacking players. Like I know you've had Theo Walcott in the past, but Walcott was all speed, and he had a lot of it, fair. But Phil Foden was, I think, one of the first English players that excited the English crowd for being as direct as he is. Like he can take a man on, he can dribble through tight spaces. Even if he has three players on him, much like Messi, he can find a way to wriggle around and out and find a pass or find a shot at goal. He is that type of player. And I feel like under Guardiola, maybe he's being shackled a little bit. Like he's not Guardiola. I don't know, and I could be wrong, guys. Please, if you are Man City fans and have watched a lot more of Foden than I am, please let us know in the comments. But I feel like Guardiola has not unlocked Phil Foden.
No, okay. So let me say this, right? Okay. Do you agree that international football is still a place where you can have flair and dynamism because it's just a little bit slower, right? Because international football is, I feel like, a few meters slower than football,
Sure.
and I
Okay.
think that's down to because players not having the chemistry that they probably
Okay.
have with their club team.
Okay.
Correct? I don't think
Okay.
that's an unfair thing to say.
Yeah.
That international football is just a little bit slower, which is why I believe someone like an Enzo Fernandez does really well in international football because he gets that little bit, he gets that 1 second extra. Right? To me, the reason I don't really rate Phil Foden anyways because I do feel like okay, if he was that sort of a player who could be unlocked, he would still be doing well for England. But I don't think he's done well at all for England.
But I feel, on the contrary, I feel like that's because he's so hardwired into the Guardiola system that he feels like that is who he is, even when he's with England. And at an international stage, no manager is going to drastically change your way of playing. You simply don't have enough time with the players to do that. Your job as an international manager is to get the best players from the country who play in different systems and find a way to have them play good football together in a system that everybody understands and everybody can deal with. In fact, like I feel like international football is a lot more vibes than
Yeah,
tactics
exactly.
right
That I
now, right?
agree. Yeah.
But with Foden, because he's so hardwired into the tactics of Guardiola and Man City, he's unable to transition into the vibes. He's unable to play as freely as he actually can play naturally because he is so hardwired into the system. I feel like he is. If you're talking about players who would have done better in a vibes era, Phil Foden would have killed it in the 2000s.
Okay, no, I think Phil Foden for me is a wrong example, and that's what I'm arguing for. Is that I do feel like Phil Foden is I think he would be he this is the he somehow got this is the best deal he ever got is to play for Man City and this career. I don't think I don't think he's someone who's gonna thrive anywhere else. I don't think he has much more to offer than what he already has given. I could be wrong. I'm
I
happy.
feel like he
I
has
mean,
a
I'm
lot
slightly
more
unhappy to
to
be
offer.
proven wrong. But yeah, in fact, I think a reasonable example might be Neymar. I don't know, maybe this very mainstream example is that would Neymar would we have seen a better Neymar,
Hmm.
right? Had there been more vibes, like was he crushed a
Bro,
little?
Neymar's life is vibes. What are you talking about? Neymar doesn't care about tactics. उसका पूरा जिंदगी vibes ही है.
Yeah, like and then you can see what that does just to live on
Yeah,
vibes. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, so maybe someone like Neymar, but for every Neymar you lose, you get an Andy Robertson, or you get a Harry Maguire, or you get, or you probably even get Gabriel scoring goals fast. Like you wouldn't get that in any other era, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's probably the trade-off that you do.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, and again,
again, Gabriel scoring goals for Arsenal is again something that has been found out quite quickly.
but that's still fine. He still scored. He still got them about, I would say, about 10 points, just 9 to 10 points. He would have gotten them
Yeah, to go
with his
from
goals,
fourth to second.
which is still a big deal. I mean, Arsenal were.
Fair, yeah. We are. As a United fan, I'm nobody to fucking
No,
say that.
irrespective of where your like the team around supports is, but I do feel like that's probably the difference. And the thing is, actually, weirdly, for all that said about Neymar, his best years were at Barca, where they were tactics. Right, the minute he tried to be all vibes at PSG, that's when his career really sunk.
I tend to disagree a little bit
Hmm.
because I feel like with the Suarez, Messi, Neymar trio for Barcelona, I don't think they were as shackled with tactics as one expected them to be. I feel like maybe the rest of the team had tactics and
Yeah.
very very well defined roles that they had to carry out, but the front three was all like, भाई लोग तुम लोग जो करना है करो. You want to go Suarez right, Neymar left, keep switching between the three of you, keep them guessing. And that was the best thing about that Barcelona side, the unpredictability of it, which leads me very neatly back to the point I'm trying to make. That unpredictability is fucking brilliant. You don't need to tell Messi what your system is. He's Messi, bencho. Whoa, whoa.
Exactly, but you need to tell Javi, Iniesta, Busquets, and Puyol and PK exactly what to do because of allowing the freedom, which I think tells us that ultimately you need a bit of both. You
Ultimately,
need
you need a bit
50% of both
of right,
because I would still say peak football was that, right?
right.
Peak joy of football was Barcelona winning 2015 Champions League.
No, no. Peak football was United in 2007 against
Oh man,
Chelsea.
that's where you are,
or
huh?
or 99 against Bayern Munich, or the 13 Premier League titles. I know Liverpool are going to win the Premier League, but that's just the second Premier League title. We have 13, so
Liverpool
there's
are
a long
not
time.
going to win the Premier League this year, I
Alright,
think.
that's for next week, dude. That's for next week.
That's
But
for
yes,
next
we,
week.
we have neatly come to the conclusion that you need a bit of both. You need a bit of tactics. You need a bit of
But with a
vibes
little more of structure.
with a little more of structure. Okay, sure. Let us know what you thought in the comments, man. We'd love to know what you guys think. If you think we are absolute idiots who have just faffed around for 40 minutes and wasted your time, please let us know that also. We'll take that into consideration for the next one. And if you have any other thoughts, then let us know. If you prefer tactics or vibes, or if you feel like a mix of the both is the best way to go, then do that. And just don't go around ransacking and vandalizing places, because that's not good. But yeah, Mugi, where can they find you on Instagram?
On Mukesh Manjunath, although I've
Right.
not been on it for a while.
Yeah. And you can find me on Instagram at Amogh. You can also follow the Corner Flag on Instagram at the rate Corner Flag Pod. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that subscribe button as well. Basically, it works the same across all social media, guys, or all modes of distribution. Follow karo,
Yeah.
subscribe karo, like karo. That's all that we ask
Hit the
for.
subscribe button, not us
Yeah.
or our places of residence or
Yes,
work.
please don't do that. But yes, thank you to Kezad Garda for composing our theme tune. And until next week, it is goodbye from us to say bye, Mukesh.
Bye, guys.
And it's bye from me.